Hello. Well, I thought it was about time for me to share another one of my riveting history videos. This is going to be a look back at the northgate entry of the Air Force Academy long, long ago. I'm going to be giving a presentation to a Boy Scout troop soon, and I wanted to practice, so you get to hear me practice. Maybe I'll do a good job because this is unrehearsed. So back in the mid-1950s, they selected the Air Force Academy area, 18,000 acres, for the construction of the Air Force Academy. There were a lot of people excited about it, and there were some that were not. But the newspaper really played up the issue of there was once a town there, Husted. There wasn't much left of the town. There was some buildings along the what we know today as I-25. The I-25 wasn't built yet, but it was called Husted. And the newspaper really played it up that the Academy was going to wipe away Husted. Well, that may be true, but there wasn't much left of it. But there was some really neat things said about the Academy. And let's look at the detail of one of these articles. Here's an excerpt. Husted, once an important stop on the Santa Fe and Rio Grande Railroad, was once a bustling center of ranchers and lumbermen. It's a dead town, sacrificed on the altar of progress. Well, I don't know if that's true. Just north will be the main entrance, the north gate of the Air Force Academy. It'll be a national monument to the finest service schools ever conceived by man. I agree with that. I went to school there. Thousands of future officers will get their training here, and yes, they did, but they won't know about Husted. Well, guess what? When I taught there again, 09 to 13, all my students knew about Husted. I drove them nuts telling stories. So let's see what Husted was. Yes, it's gone, but I want to help you know what it was and how exciting it was. So there is a sign along the new Santa Fe Trail that talks about the invisible ghost towns, but that's about it. If you don't know where to look, you can't find anything, but there still remains foundations and stuff from the old Husted area. So here's an aerial view of the Academy area before it was the Academy area. Look close, you'll see in the upper middle Eagle Peak. And if you come right down the peak, you'll see a ridge line. That is where they put the cadet area up there. If you look to the right or the north, you'll see an open area that became the athletic fields. And if you look down along the bottom, you'll see the road from Colorado Springs to Denver. And you won't see the North Gate, but it's pretty much was going to be built right there in the lower right. And we're going to take a closer look at this picture. Here we go. Hey, look, in 1958, they were building the interchange and also starting construction of I-25. This should look familiar. That's the north entry today. But if you go up there today, you will find there is a whole lot of dirt being moved around. They're going to connect Powers Boulevard to I-25 there, just south of the Bass Pro Shop and the Western Mining Museum. So here's what it looked like in 58, and if you look up there today, you'll see it looks like that again. They're really pushing a lot of dirt. Let's take a close look at what the North Gate entry was originally for the Academy. Holy cow, look at that. There's a little guard shack there and a road, and you can see the railroad crossing the center right to left. Look close, you'll see railroad cars, a concrete processing plant. That is where all the concrete, cement, and stuff was made to build the Academy, which you'll see in the upper center of the photo. You can see Eagle Peak, and if you look real close, you'll see some of the buildings being built. So this concrete processing facility pretty much obliterated most of the remains of Husted, but there are still some foundations and stuff tucked away in the trees that I have explored. Okay, so let's press on. So here's a map from 1912, okay? Look, there's Husted. Look, there's some dots. Those are buildings, okay? If you look at the D in Husted, you'll see a road going off to the east. That's the road we just looked at with the guard shack. That's the original way to get onto the Academy. But this is 1912, when Husted was a bustling railroad community, and it was pretty busy with stations on both the Denver Rio Grande, which was built in 1871, and the Santa Fe, built in 1887. We're going to learn more about Husted. There are hints of Husted still there. I bet this looks familiar. This is right outside the North Gate. It's the Reynolds House, built in 1894, and it is a Husted house. In fact, the Western Mining Museum folks are refurbishing it as a historic site, and I salute them for that. So that is a Husted house. Okay, here's the train station at the Denver Rio Grande station. There it is, Husted, and the guys are hanging out with a locomotive. Husted began with workers and families who in 1871 helped build the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad through today's Academy grounds. The company built a station, section house, and used old boxcars for employee housing. Husted also included an engine house where helper locomotives were stationed. They pulled or pushed trains up the grade 10 miles north to Palmer Lake. In 1887, the Atchison-Topeka Santa Fe Railroad built its line just to the east of the Denver Rio Grande station. Husted would eventually grow to include a grocery store, cafe, church, and school. So this is the station on the Santa Fe. Those buildings are old boxcars removed off their wheels and made into a station. Pretty cool, huh? Here's a map of the Husted Denver Rio Grande station, and I have used this to do my historic site exploring. You could see the original narrow gauge railroad weaving through there, and the straightened out standard gauge railroad going through there. If you look close, you'll see names of landowners back then, and it's just exquisite record keeping by the railroad. And I thought you'd enjoy seeing this cool map that Larry Green gave me. Along the road there were businesses. Here's a business, Kinner Store. The Kinner family gave me this, and that's Jerome Kinner in the photo with his roadster and gravity-fed fuel station there. And you could stop here and get a drink or a candy or even cigars, as the sign says. Isn't that interesting? But this was along the road to Denver. There was some sad days, and August 14th, 1909 was a sad day in Husted. You see, the track through Husted only had one track, so the trains would go off on the side and let each other pass. Well, there was a mix-up in signals, and on August 14th, two trains collided, and here's some photos from back then of this terrible crash, which took many lives and injured many people. So that site is just south of the Northgate Bridge. It happened just north of the little town of Husted. What a terrible day. I want to swing it back towards the positive. There's an Air Force Academy 2003 grad connection to the Northgate, and that is Lieutenant Colonel David McElroy, who, as you can see from this homestead map, there was a lot of McElroys who homesteaded in the north part of this area where the North Gate is, and I've provided you a map here. Well, David's great uncle was David McElroy, and I somehow connected to him, and I took David to where his family homesteaded, and there he is, giving the thumbs up with me. There's David McElroy, the pioneer, at his cabin just north of the area where he ran a cattle loading station in Husted. He also made a big lake, and it had this device used to open and close the lake's drains so that he could send water down the trough and water up the cattle before they loaded onto the trains, the train cars. So that's pretty cool. And this hardware from long ago still exists, hidden in the woods. How about that? Well, up at the cadet area, there was some ranches, and maybe you'll recognize this area. This is the Cathedral Rock Ranch or Lehman Ranch, and there's Cathedral Rock in the background. But look at that field. It's a little bit sloped, and you can see some cattle out there. The Lehmans ran a 4,000-acre cattle ranch. Let's take a look from the air. Quite a neat ranch and home, and a great place to live. It was located on what was called Dead Man's Flats. Well, where is this? Let's take another. Holy cow, Lehman Ranch is located where the Cadet Soccer Stadium was located. And if you look real close at this photo, you'll see his grazing land was leveled off and made into cadet athletic fields. And there's Vandenberg Hall, Fairchild Hall, and Mitchell Hall being built to prepare a way for cadets to get a great education and serve in America's Air Force or Space Force. And there's Cathedral Rock in the background. How about that? The Lehman Ranch, many of the buildings were relocated, but there it is, right where the Cadet Soccer Stadium is. Well, I'm going to finish with this. The Academy has been good stewards of history. They preserved the Burgess cabin built in 1873, and it is now the Pioneer cabin. And here's a picture of it in the 1950s. Earl Douglas, who was the landowner, nearly demanded that the Academy not knock down that beautiful symbol of history, and they didn't. And it's still there today. Now, that outhouse you see there is not there. However, could you imagine waking up at night and having to go out there when there's snow on the ground to use the facility? Oh, brr, that would be cold. This is what it looks like today. And I want to salute the Academy for taking good care of the 5 pioneer graves that are there. They've recently updated the stones, and they really, really preserve the history. This is available for you to see. It's near the auto hobby shop on the Academy. Well, now you know more about Husted and the North Gate than you ever knew, and I hope it gives you new insight to the pioneer spirit that lives there at the North Gate of the Air Force Academy. Hope you enjoyed this. Take care.